We often imagine aging as a slow fading, of energy, of relevance, of dreams, but the truth is far more intricate, far more human. Beneath the silver hair and softened voices are lives still pulsing with memory, laughter, quiet sorrows, and untold wisdom. Older adults don't stop living, and they begin to live differently. They notice more, feel deeper, love quieter but truer. In the stillness of their days, there are echoes of old songs, stories left unfinished, and longings that never truly faded. They may walk slower, but their souls are no less alive. Behind every wrinkle is a moment they survived, a lesson they carry, a kindness they chose to give. What surprises us most is not what they've lost, but all that they still hold: humor, sensuality, imagination, pain, forgiveness, and hope. If we listen, really listen, we'll hear that they are not merely growing old, they are growing deeper. Do not regret growing older. It is a privilege denied to many. Have you ever looked into the eyes of an elderly person and wondered what silent stories sleep behind those quiet glances? We often assume that old age is simply the afterword of a long book, a time of rest, decline, and detachment. But the truth is far more surprising, far more beautiful, and far more complex than most people ever imagine. In this journey, we will walk slowly, not just because the footsteps of old age are unhurried, but because each step reveals a truth we've long overlooked. Some may warm your heart, others might challenge your assumptions, but each one is a window into a world many see, but few truly understand. So, come closer, sit for a while, and listen. To understand the elderly is not to look back, but to look closer, because what's waiting there isn't the end of the story, it's the most tender part of it. They still fall in love, deeply, quietly, and sometimes for the first time. The heart does not age the way the skin does. It does not wrinkle, it does not fade. It only learns to beat more gently, more wisely, and sometimes for someone new. A different kind of love. When we think of love, we often picture the electricity of youth, fast heartbeats, blushing, cheeks and breathless anticipation. But there's another kind of love, quieter, deeper, and more enduring. It arrives not like a storm, but like morning light across an old wooden floor, slowly, gently, filling the room without asking for permission. Many people are surprised to learn that love doesn't retire with age. In fact, some older adults experience love more profoundly in their later years than they ever did before. It's not about romance in the cinematic sense. It's about companionship, trust, and something even rarer: peace. Imagine two widowed souls sitting side by side in a quiet park. There are no grand declarations, no extravagant gestures, just two hands reaching for each other, trembling slightly, not from nerves but from the softness of knowing how fragile and precious this moment truly is. This isn't a fairy tale. It's life after loss. It's love that has been purified by decades of experience and sometimes heartbreak. Love beyond time for many, falling in love later in life, means undoing decades of assumptions. Some spent their youth in marriages that were functional but not fulfilling. Others never married at all, devoting their time to family or career, always postponing intimacy for later. And now, later has arrived. What surprises most people is that love at this stage is not less. It's simply different. It comes without the pressure to impress. There's no competition, no hurry, no fear of missing out. It's a love that is deeply present, the kind that lingers in shared silences and evening tea, in unspoken understanding, and in the simple act of remembering each other's medicine schedules. This kind of connection often transcends the physical. It is soul deep. The courage to begin again, starting again at 70, 80, or even 90 takes courage. More courage, perhaps, than starting at 20. There are more memories to carry, more people to grieve, more scars that whisper, "Be careful." But older adults are often braver than we give them credit for. They know how to survive loss, they know how to sit with uncertainty, and because they understand how fleeting everything is, they are often the most open-hearted when it comes to receiving love, without demands, without guarantees. As one 84-year-old woman shared, I don't need him to promise me forever. I just want someone to hold my hand at night and to remember how I like my tea in the morning. A story to remember. Let me tell you a story, one that doesn't appear in movies but lives quietly in the corners of real life. Mr. Lam was 79 when he moved into a small retirement community. He had been married for 51 years. After his wife passed, he swore he'd never love again. He wore his loneliness like a jacket, something familiar, something he thought he couldn't take off. Then came Mrs. Anne. She was 75, sharp-tongued, full of laughter, and had lost her husband 15 years prior. She was independent, proud, and claimed she had no time for old men with sad eyes. But something in Mr. Lam softened her. He brought her flowers from the garden. She brought him books to read. They walked every morning, at first with silence, then with stories. 3 years later, they weren't married. They didn't call each other boyfriend or girlfriend, but they shared everything: laughter, memory, even grief. And when Mr. Lam fell ill, it was Mrs. Anne who stayed by his side each night, whispering poems he once read to her. When he passed, she didn't cry in front of anyone. But for months, she placed a cup of green tea at his old seat every morning before starting her walk alone. It wasn't young love, she said. It was real love, maybe the only real love I ever knew. The gentle surprise. So yes, older people still fall in love, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes quietly, and often more sincerely than ever before. It's one of the great surprises of aging. The heart, though weathered, is still tender, and maybe, just maybe, and the most beautiful kind of love is not the one that starts with butterflies, but the one that begins with stillness, with deep knowing, with a shared look across decades of life. Love doesn't retire. It matures. It becomes soft where it was once sharp, patient where it was once restless, true where it was once unsure. And that is a kind of love the young have yet to learn. 2, they carry grief like an old friend, not a wound. Grief for them is not a sudden visitor. It is a long-time companion, familiar, softened with time, and sometimes even kind. The quiet weight of absence when someone young loses a loved one. Grief often comes crashing, loud, raw, overwhelming. But with age, grief takes on a different texture. It doesn't lessen, it doesn't disappear, it changes form. For many older adults, grief is no longer an intruder. It has become a part of their daily landscape, like a tree that lost its leaves, but still stands with quiet dignity in the center of the yard. They have outlived parents, siblings, friends, sometimes even their children. And in that long line of farewells, something remarkable happens. They stop running from grief. They sit with it. You'll notice it in the way an elderly man looks out the window a little longer than necessary, in how an older woman folds a sweater and places it gently back in the closet, a sweater that no longer belongs to anyone still living. It's not that they've forgotten, it's that they've learned how to carry the memory without letting it crush them. Grief that walks beside you, grief in later life, is not loud. It doesn't need to be. It has already said everything it came to say. Older adults often talk about those they've lost in the present tense, not out of confusion, but out of love. My husband still brings me calm when I'm anxious, a widow once said. He's just not in the room anymore. There's something sacred in that, something that doesn't demand closure. The modern world urges us to move on, but the elderly know not everything needs to be moved past. Some loves deserve to be carried, even when heavy, even when silent. Grief becomes a companion. It no longer takes, it reminds. It reminds them that they have lived deeply, that they have loved well. Rituals of remembrance. Unlike younger generations who often try to distract themselves from loss, older adults tend to build rituals around memory. They light incense. They visit graves not just on anniversaries, but on ordinary Tuesdays. They cook the favorite dish of the one who is gone. They speak to them aloud, softly, like a whisper into another dimension. These rituals aren't about clinging to the past. They're about honoring it. In these quiet acts, grief is transformed. It is no longer a wound. It is a scar that has become part of the skin. Tender, yes, but no longer bleeding. A story in the shadows, Mrs. Yen is 88 years old. Her son passed away 12 years ago, suddenly a heart attack. He was only 54. Every morning she places a bowl of fruit on a small wooden altar. She lights 2 sticks of incense and sits quietly for 15 minutes. She doesn't cry, she doesn't speak, but her eyes are steady, looking slightly above the flame, as if into a space only she can see. He visits me in my dreams sometimes, she says. He never speaks, but I know he's well. That's enough. People often ask her how she can bear it, to lose a child. She smiles faintly and replies, "You don't bear it, you become it, and then you live as both yourself and a little bit of them." Her grief walks beside her, not behind, not ahead, just beside. The gentle surprise. What's surprising is not that older adults grieve, it's how they do it. They teach us that grief doesn't have to be fixed. It doesn't need to be solved or soothed away. It can be folded into the fabric of daily life. Made holy by ritual, softened by time, accompanied by memory instead of pain. There's something profoundly peaceful in that acceptance. Grief doesn't make them bitter. It makes them wise. They've learned that love doesn't end. It simply changes address, and that those who leave us don't vanish. They become part of the way we see the world, the way we walk through it. In the end, older adults remind us grief when honored becomes less of a weight and more of a witness. Not the shadow of loss, but the echo of love. They crave purpose, not just comfort. A soft chair is not enough. A warm meal is not enough. The soul, even at 80, hungers for meaning. Muritoe. Beyond safety and softness, when people talk about caring for the elderly, the conversation often centers on comfort, making sure they are warm, well-fed, and medically cared for. But comfort, while essential, is not the same as fulfillment. What many forget, mean or never knew, is that older adults still wake up with questions in their hearts, still wonder what their day will mean, still feel the ache to matter. They don't just want safety, they want purpose. Imagine a man who once taught generations of students, or a woman who raised 5 children while running a small family business. These people spent decades giving, solving, leading, creating. When they retire, the world often stops asking them for input, and yet their mind and spirit remain alert, rich with experience. Comfort may ease the body, but it does not satisfy the soul. The vital thread of contribution purpose is not a luxury, it is a need, and for older adults it often takes new, quieter forms. Some tend to their gardens not for decoration, but as caretakers of life. Some mentor the young, offering wisdom not found in textbooks, but earned in the fires of time. Some volunteer, write letters, knit scarves, or teach others how to pray. Some care for great-grandchildren, filling a gap that no childcare center can replace. "If I stop being useful," said one 87-year-old man, "I feel like I disappear, even when people are still around me." To matter, to be needed, is oxygen to the aging soul. A story with empty chairs, Mr. Bean was a retired literature teacher in his late 70s. After his wife passed and his children moved abroad, he found himself alone in a large, silent house. He had food, he had medication, he had a comfortable pension, but none of those things kept the sorrow away. One day on a walk, he passed a community center. A sign read, "Afternoon reading circle for local teens. Volunteers welcome." Something in him stirred. He walked in the next week, holding a weathered copy of Les Miserables under his arm. He began reading to a group of teenagers who, at first, barely listened. But week after week, something changed. They began to ask questions, began to stay after, began to call him Thay, teacher. Months passed. The empty chairs in his home no longer felt like ghosts. They felt like rest between moments of impact. "They think I'm helping them," he said one afternoon, smiling, "but truly, they've saved me." The gentle surprise. Here lies another truth most people miss. Older adults are not passive beings waiting to be cared for. They are still, in so many ways, beings who long to give. Purpose doesn't retire. Meaning doesn't expire. Their bodies may move slower, but their hearts still beat with the question, am I still needed? And when the answer is yes, when they feel their life has value beyond survival, something lights up inside them. Not with youthful energy, but with quiet grace. We often speak of giving back to the elderly, but we forget they too want to give back to the world. And in that giving, they find something far more precious than comfort. They find life. Fiercely, they have an inner world richer than you imagine. Silence is not emptiness. In the elderly, it is often the fullness of memory, reflection, and unseen depth. Still waters run. Deep, we live in a world that rewards expression. Those who speak quickly, act boldly, and broadcast their thoughts are seen as alive, engaged, or relevant. Meanwhile, the elderly, who often sit quietly, speak less, and observe more, are mistakenly seen as disconnected or slow. But beneath that stillness lies a world few bother to explore. Their silence is not the silence of vacancy. It is the silence of a library. Every line on their face is a chapter. Every pause in their speech a paragraph they are still rereading. What looks like staring out the window may, in truth, be a journey through decades, a visit to a conversation long, past a street now gone, a face that only the heart remembers. They may not say much, but if you listen with patience, what they do share can feel like poetry written by time itself, the palace of memory. The mind of an elder is not a place of decline, it is an archive. In it are the faces of parents lost to war, the songs sung during harvests, the scent of a first love's perfume. There are small victories that were never celebrated out loud, old betrayals forgiven but never forgotten, questions they still carry, regrets they've laid to rest, prayers whispered in the dark that no one else heard. You ask them what they're thinking, they say nothing, but in that nothing lives 100 lives. One elderly man once said, I have lived through revolutions, famines, weddings, funerals, and 4 types of currency. Do not mistake my quiet for emptiness. A story. Within a story, in a coastal village, there lived an old woman named Bahan. Every afternoon she would sit by her small window peeling fruit and looking at the sea. Locals said she barely spoke. Young people often passed her by, thinking she was just a quiet old lady. One summer, a university student doing a research project decided to interview her. At first, Bahan answered in simple phrases, but slowly the words began to unfurl, like paper boats in a calm tide. She told of hiding rice during the war, of letters sent to a fiancé who never returned, of once saving a stranger's life with only a bowl of porridge, of burying her own dreams so her children could chase theirs. The student sat in silence, tears streaming, notebook forgotten. You have more stories than my library, he whispered. She smiled gently, returned to peeling fruit, and replied, I just stopped telling them out loud, but I never stopped living them inside. The gentle surprise here is the surprising truth. Many older adults live more vivid inner lives than we can imagine. Richer than social media feeds, deeper than news headlines, and more colorful than any film. They don't need noise to feel alive. They don't need constant stimulation to feel joy. Their inner world, quiet, vast, and private, is their sanctuary. We must not mistake their silence for absence. They are not fading. They are dwelling in the rooms of memory, dwelling in the halls of meaning, dwelling in the sacred space between what was, what is, and what still matters. So when you sit beside someone old and still, lean in, ask, and if they let you in, even for a moment, you will not leave the same. They are often funnier than you expect. Age doesn't dull the wit. In many, it sharpens it, like sunlight condensing into a beam of quiet mischief. Not just wisdom, but wit. We often associate aging with seriousness, solemnity, even sadness. But if you spend enough time around older adults, really, spend time, you'll discover something delightful. They can be astonishingly funny. Not the kind of comedy that performs for applause, but a dry, knowing, often self-deprecating humor that comes from decades of watching the world turn in circles. They've seen fashions rise and fall, wars start and end, politics repeat itself under different names. That long view gives them a special kind of comic clarity. a wisdom that doesn't take itself too seriously. Their humor is not loud, but it is sharp, not cruel, but it is honest. And sometimes when life becomes heavy, it is their jokes, quiet, perfectly timed, that lift the weight. Laughter as survival humor is not just entertainment for older people. Sometimes it's a tool for survival. They've faced illness, loss, loneliness, and yet they laugh. Not because life is always funny, but because they've learned the secret. If you don't laugh, you'll drown. One elderly woman once joked, "At my age, I don't buy green bananas. Too risky. It's dark, it's honest, and it's hilarious." They know life is fragile. They've made peace with that. And in that peace, they find permission to laugh at things others fear. A story of quiet comedy on Tam. An 84-year-old man in the countryside was asked by a young city volunteer, "Do you know how to use Facebook?" He squinted, then replied, "Yes, I use it every day to ignore my children." The group burst into laughter. Later, when asked about his health, he said, "I'm fine, my back hurts, my knees complain, my memory wanders, but my appetite is strong. That's the most loyal friend I've got." His jokes weren't rehearsed. They were simply his way of staying light even when time grew heavy. The gentle surprise here lies another unexpected truth. Many older people are not just wise. They are wickedly funny. They've let go of pretenses. They no longer care for masks. They say what they mean, and sometimes that honesty comes wrapped in a grin, a wink, or a story that ends with a perfectly timed twist. And the best part? Their laughter is not just a gift to themselves, it's a gift to everyone around them. It reminds us that aging is not a straight descent into seriousness. It can be full of giggles, full of cheek, full of those quiet little one-liners that stay with you long after the conversation ends. "Do I fear death?" one grandpa once asked. "No, I just hope it's not scheduled too early in the morning." Their final thought. The next time you sit with an elder, listen for their humor. It might come in a soft chuckle. It might hide in a sarcastic comment. It might arrive unexpectedly after a long pause, and when it does, laugh with them. For in that moment, you are not only sharing joy, you are sharing in their strength, their resilience, and their refusal to let time steal the sparkle from their eyes. 6 and they are still learning, quietly, constantly. The mind may age, but the hunger to understand never retires. The myth of the finished mind. There's a quiet assumption that older people stop learning, that they've already seen enough, known enough, and chosen to rest inside what they already believe. It's a comforting image, perhaps, but it's far from the truth. In reality, many older adults are still learning, not always through formal classes or textbooks, but through quiet, daily curiosity. They're learning how to use new technology, not because it's easy, but because they want to talk to their grandchildren across oceans. They're learning how to cook new dishes from online videos, how to stretch their bodies through gentle yoga, how to understand unfamiliar music, or even foreign languages just to connect better with a changing world. Sometimes, they're even relearning themselves, peeling away old assumptions, softening old judgments, making peace with ideas they once resisted. The courage of curiosity. There is a special kind of bravery in an older person who chooses to learn something new. It means facing the possibility of feeling lost, confused, even foolish, and doing it anyway. Mrs. Hoa, 79, had never touched a smartphone until her grandson gifted her one. At first, she struggled. The screen was too small, the buttons too strange. But she watched tutorial videos every evening, took notes, and practiced by texting herself "good morning" just to get used to the keyboard. 3 months later, she was not only messaging her children, but also watching videos about classical music, saving recipes, and learning about the stars. "I may walk slow," she said, "but my brain is still dancing." Learning as a way of being. For many elders, learning isn't about passing tests or gaining status. It's about staying connected to the world, to others, and to their own aliveness. They listen to podcasts, they take notes during community talks, they read spiritual texts, old letters, new poems. They ask questions that younger people no longer think to ask. This quiet form of learning, deeply internal, deeply patient, is often overlooked, but it's there. Always there. "Each day," said an old man in a village library, "I learn at least one new thing, even if it's just a better way to tie my shoes. It keeps me humble." A gentle surprise. Here's something most people don't expect. Older people are still students of life. They are not finished books. They are living manuscripts, still being edited, still turning pages, still adding footnotes to the soul. And their willingness to keep learning, despite slower hands, tired eyes, or unfamiliar words, is not just inspiring. It's sacred. It tells us you're never too old to be curious, you're never too late to change, you're never beyond wonder. So if you sit beside an elder, don't just assume they're there to teach you. Ask them what they've learned this week. You may be surprised, not just by their answers, but by their spirit. They carry invisible grief you'll never fully understand. Not all pain cries out. Some simply sits quietly beside us year after year, like an old friend who never left. The quiet weight of years, as people age, they often grow quieter, not because they have nothing to say, but because they have seen so much that words no longer suffice. What we often forget is that many older adults carry grief like a second skin. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg for attention. It just stays, steady, silent, and deeply woven into their being. Grief over a spouse long gone, grief over a child who left and never came back, grief over dreams that had to be buried, friendships that faded, siblings taken too soon. Grief over the sound of their mother's voice, which they can no longer clearly recall. These are not stories they always share, but they are there, living in the pause before they speak, in the way they fold a sweater, in the long stare out the window as the light changes. A story of what remains. In a small town, there was an old man named Mr. Vin. He walked every morning to the same bench by the lake, carrying 2 cups of tea. One he drank, the other he simply let rest beside him. One day, a teenager finally asked, "Why 2 cups?" He replied softly, "It's for my wife. She's been gone 20 years, but I still talk to her. I tell her about the ducks, the weather, the way the light moves. Some habits are not about forgetting, they're about remembering." The boy didn't know what to say, so he sat beside him, and they drank tea, one for the living, one for the love that never truly left. The grief you can't see. One of the hardest truths about aging is this: the longer you live, the more you lose. Some elders have buried children, some have outlived every friend they ever made. Some have watched their bodies betray them slowly, a cruel farewell piece by piece. Some grieve the loss of relevance, of identity, of being needed. But they do it with grace, with dignity, with a kind of courage that rarely makes the headlines. And when they say, "I'm fine," it's not a lie. It's just the simplest way to carry sorrow without making others uncomfortable. The gentle surprise. What surprises many younger people is this: older adults don't always want their grief fixed. They just want it honored. They don't expect you to erase the pain, but they appreciate when someone sees it, not as weakness, but as a kind of silent nobility. Their hearts have broken 100 times, yet they still offer love. They've cried behind closed doors, yet they still smile when greeting you. They've let go of so much, yet they still reach out to hold your hand. That is a strength forged not in comfort, but in enduring. A final thought. So the next time you sit with an elder, and their voice trails off or they sigh without explanation, pause. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let it breathe. Let them carry what they carry, and be honored. To be near it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply, "I see you, and I'm here." For in that moment, their invisible grief becomes quietly shared, and even the oldest pain can feel a little less alone. 8. They experience time differently than you do. To the young, time races ahead. To the old, it folds gently behind and lingers. The shifting rhythm of days. As we grow older, the way we experience time changes. For the young, a year feels like a sprint. Everything moves fast. Deadlines, plans, news, the never-ending scroll of daily distractions. But for older adults, time begins to stretch and curve. The rush softens, moments become longer, silences grow richer. Even a cup of tea or the sound of birds in the morning becomes a small ceremony. This isn't just slowness, it's attentiveness, it's presence. While the world hurries forward, many elders are walking more slowly, not only because their legs demand it, but because they've learned the deep truth. What is fast is often shallow. What is slow reveals depth. A day that means more to a 28-year-old, a Wednesday might be something to get through. To a 78-year-old, a Wednesday could be everything. A rare sunny morning, a phone call from an old friend, a chance to walk without pain, a quiet lunch in the garden. One small afternoon may hold decades of memory. One song can bring back the smell of a lover's hair from 50 years ago. One breeze can carry the same warmth as a day long gone. This is what younger people often forget, too. The elderly, time is not just counted in hours, it's felt in layers. A story in slow motion. Ba Chin, an 82-year-old woman in the Mekong Delta, was asked why she always took the same walk around her village every morning. She smiled and said, "I see new things every day. Her tree leaning more than yesterday, a boy growing taller, a bird I haven't heard in a while. You don't notice them when you rush." For her, the walk wasn't exercise. It was prayer, observation, gratitude. She didn't walk to get somewhere. She walked to notice where she already was. The compression of the past, another quiet reality. While the present may stretch, the past compresses. To the elderly, events from 40 years ago can feel closer than what they had for lunch yesterday. Memory doesn't follow the clock. It follows the heart. A wedding in 1965. The birth of a child in 1973. The sound of a radio, playing songs that no one listens to anymore. These things are not far to them. They are alive, present, touchable, even if just in thought. So when an elder repeats a story, it's not always forgetfulness. Sometimes it's reverence. They are returning to a sacred moment, one that time never fully took from them. The gentle surprise. Here's what might surprise you. Older adults are not stuck in the past. They are simply in deeper relationship with it. They see time like layers of ocean, the surface busy and bright, the depths slow and still. They are not clinging to memories out of sadness. They are honoring them. To the elderly, every moment holds echoes. And when they pause, it's not because they're lost. It's because they're listening. A final thought: when you sit with an elder, try matching their pace. Walk a little slower. Talk with more silence between the words. Let the moment expand, like soft light through an open window. In their rhythm there is wisdom. In their pace there is peace. You may be surprised by what you notice, not just about them, but about life itself. They still long for touch, closeness, and intimacy. Tias. Skin may wrinkle, but the longing for warmth, for closeness, never fades. The myth of diminished desire. One of the quietest misunderstandings about aging is the idea that older people no longer crave connection. Physical, emotional, even romantic. It's as if, at a certain age, we imagine they no longer need a hand to hold, a cheek to kiss, or a soul to share secrets with. But that is a myth. The truth is, the need for closeness does not grow old. The longing to be touched, gently, meaningfully, does not vanish with age. It simply becomes quieter. Less spoken, sometimes hidden behind lowered eyes or polite smiles, but it is there, deep, tender, and enduring. The power of simple touch, for many elderly people, especially those who live alone or have lost a partner, even small gestures of affection carry profound meaning. A hug that lingers a few seconds longer, a warm hand, resting on theirs while talking, a kiss on the forehead from a grandchild, a gentle stroke on the back while walking beside them. These are not luxuries, they are nourishment. To be touched, without haste, without duty, is to be reminded, you are still loved, you are still seen. Love beyond romance. Intimacy. In old age isn't always about romance in the traditional sense. It can be the shared silence between two lifelong companions, the way someone still lays out their late spouse's clothes, the ritual of combing each other's hair, the gentle care in preparing tea just the way the other likes it. Mr. Nam, 84, and his wife, 81, have been married for 60 years. They no longer dance or travel, but every morning he still peels her fruit, Every evening she massages his feet. He once said, "Young love burns hot. Old love, it glows and never goes out." The loneliness. No one talks about. What often goes unseen is the loneliness that hides in plain sight, especially among those who have lost partners, moved away from family, or live in care homes. Many elders go days, even weeks, without meaningful touch. No hugs, no handshakes, no one brushing a stray hair from their face. This absence isn't always visible, but it's felt like cold that seeps into the bones, and over time it can become a quiet ache that never finds words. The gentle surprise. What may surprise you is that intimacy in old age can be even more tender, more sacred than at any other time in life, because it is stripped of pretense, because it is no longer urgent but deeply appreciated, because it carries the quiet knowledge that time is precious, and so is each touch. Older people don't lose the capacity for love. In many ways, they love better, slower, softer, with eyes that see more and hearts that fear less. A final thought, so the next time you sit beside an elder, offer your hand, let them hold it, hug them, and don't rush it. Look them in the eye when you speak. Let your presence say what words often cannot. You are not forgotten. You are still worthy of closeness. Because the desire for love and touch doesn't end with youth. It deepens with age. 10. They still have dreams, quiet ones but deep. Even the oldest tree still reaches for sunlight. The dream that doesn't die. When we think of dreams, we often think of youth, bold ambitions, wild hopes, the thrill of chasing something, just out of reach. But dreams don't end when hair turns grey. They don't retire when the body slows. They don't vanish with age. They evolve. Older adults still dream, just differently. Their dreams are often quieter now, more personal. Less about changing the world, and more about touching it gently before they go. And these dreams, they matter more than we know. A different kind of dream. Some elders dream of writing a story they never told. Some dream of learning to paint. Some want to return to their childhood village just once more. Some hope to make peace with an estranged child. Some long to be present at a grandchild's graduation or wedding or simply birthday. These are not small dreams. They are sacred because they hold meaning in every wrinkle, every whispered hope, every day left. And sometimes their greatest dream is simple: to leave this world with their heart lighter than when they came. The story of Mrs. Lan, 87, had always loved poetry, but never shared a word she wrote. One day, her grandson found a box under her bed, filled with tiny notebooks. Poems written in careful strokes across decades. When he asked why she never published them, she said, "Because no one asked." So he did. And they made a small book. It sold just 24 copies. She cried when she held it in her hands, not because of fame, but because a dream kept alive in secret for over 60 years had finally taken flight. She whispered, "It's not too late." It's never too late. The gentle surprise. Here's what may surprise you. Some of the most radiant dreams live inside the oldest souls, not because they're grand or dramatic, but because they are pure, unafraid, rooted in truth. Older people dream not just for themselves, but for those they love. A daughter who finds peace, a grandson who remembers their stories, a legacy of kindness that outlives them. They still want to grow, inwardly, spiritually, to heal, to give, to finish well. A final thought, so ask them gently, what do you still dream of? You might be surprised by what you hear, and more than that, you might become a part of helping that dream come true. Because when we listen to the dreams of the elderly, we are not just honoring their past, we are celebrating their present and helping write their final chapters with dignity and care. Even now, the soul still reaches, the heart still hopes, and dreams still rise like soft light at the edge of life's twilight. Final reflection. Growing old, growing deeper. Old age is not the end of the story. It's the quiet chapter where meaning deepens and every word begins to matter more. We live in a world that often turns its eyes away from aging. We chase the new, we applaud speed, we revere youth. But if we slow down just for a moment, we'll find that the lives of the elderly are not faded photographs or forgotten pages. They are living stories, still unfolding in silence and softness, still full of emotion, still teaching, still longing, still alive. The 10 truths we've explored aren't just facts. They are doorways. They invite us to see differently, to lean in closer, to recognize that beneath the surface of slower steps and quieter days, there is still humor, hunger, memory, longing, hope, grace, and yes, even dreams. What the elderly teach us without saying a word. They teach us that presence matters more than plans, that listening is deeper than fixing, that the heart does not age, even when the body bends, that silence can be rich and a touch can be sacred, that love, the real kind, doesn't fade, it matures, and most of all, they remind us, one day, we will be them. We will want to be seen, not pitied, to be touched, not managed, to be valued, not forgotten. So perhaps the question is not, what do the elderly need from us, but rather, what do we need to remember through them? And you, the reader, if you've come this far, perhaps it's because something in your heart already knows. There is something sacred about aging, something hidden yet holy, something slow yet full of light. Let us honor that. In our parents, in our grandparents, in the quiet man who sits on the same bench every morning, in the woman who watches the world from her window, and one day, in ourselves. Because old age is not a shadow, it's a lantern. And if we choose to walk beside it, not ahead of it, we may find that the light we feared is the light that saves us.